Hello, today I'm talking about church manipulation. And a lot of times I'd say that can sometimes destroy some people's faith in God. Uh, if they're being manipulated and they know they're being manipulated, I understood I was actually being manipulated. I didn't fully understand to what degree it was. So, this had some time in the past, and I was actually talking to this one lady, and she basically had grown up in church, so she understood about church manipulation. So I asked her, okay, well, what do you see normally for church manipulation versus the type of manipulation that I was going through? And she told me it's like usually it's just like a light tap on the hand kind of deal, but when it came to me, it was basically beating me up, leaving me for dead kind of deal. And that's a big difference between a light tap and literally beating somebody up. And I was fighting that manipulation. So they were not happy with that at all, what I was doing, and part of that was they would not explain stuff to me at all. I had become close friends at one point with the daughter of the church's pastor, and things kind of deteriorate. I also learned that the mother, once you do something that she does not like, automatically it's a strike, you're out kind of deal. And things are put into place to stop you in that sense. Or prevent that thing from so-called happening again that you don't like to have happen. With the daughter that I was close friends with, I kind of learned. She was just half jokingly, it's like, oh yeah, you can turn anything that person says against them, make it look like it was their fault kind of deal. And she literally just was joking around, was like twisting everything I was saying and like blaming me. And I'm like, I mean, she was just joking at that moment, but I realized she was too good at that just to be a one-off kind of thing. And when things started happening, she was fighting in that sense. And I remember telling this one guy the exact scenario I was talking to you guys about, how she would, twist everything you say and turn it against you. And I was telling him that that's kind of how this one woman fought. And I believe he was actually from that church. And he was interested in two different ladies. And I'm like, well, okay, two different ladies, two different pastors' daughters. And as soon as I mentioned that, how, like, as soon as I was telling about how she would joke, and he was like, oh. And I think the red lights the lights were just going off in his head, like, this is like not good for me. And he was like just asking my advice about two different ladies, and I'm like, yeah. And I think he was actually from that church too. I met him at a campus, Christian campus ministry thing, and so there was different manipulation definitely going on. I remember dealing with the father at one point. He was like, oh, can we talk? And I'm like, well, maybe now I can finally get to the bottom of some of the stuff that's going on. And in that whole process, he's like, well, no, I can't meet this day. And I'm trying to find a day that both of us can work, but he's not giving any suggestions. So that was the kind of the key thing. So it's like, it sounds like it's my idea to meet on this particular day. Because I kept naming him. He's just like saying no. And the Lord just kind of gives me this dream, a warning dream. It's like that he's going to, basically, it's going to be like all these guys kind of meeting in this room together. And there's going to be all these papers. And it's like kind of showing me, it's like he's going to try throwing the Bible at you. But that's not really the real issue that he has with you. And he wasn't really wanting to deal with whatever issue he had with me. He just wanted to throw the Bible at me and use the Bible as a form of manipulation and a form of attack against me. And I realized when I woke up from that dream, it's like, wait a minute, we had actually planned a certain event on a particular day, because the day that I had picked, granted, he made it sound like I was picking it, but in reality, he just kept on saying no until I eventually picked that certain date. That was actually the day of the board meeting. So if I had actually gone that day, I would have walked into a board meeting with a whole bunch of other elders and all that, and it was like basically a trap. I woke up and I told him the next day, I called him and was like, well, the Lord told me there's a trap there. I can't meet that day. And I was like, oh, okay. And so the Lord was actually protecting me. One of the things, if you feel like you're being manipulated, sometimes it's, the one verse is like, be wise as a serpent, but to be harmless as a dove. And a serpent can wiggle and woggle and slither their ways around, and that was kind of what I felt like I had to do a lot of times. But at the same time, I was also trying to be harmless. I wasn't trying to be disruptive. And I think a lot of times when you're in that certain circumstance, especially if you feel like you're really being manipulated, like they're literally beating you up kind of deal. Sometimes any extra ammunition, you going berserk, going crazy, it would just like fuel their aspect. I was like, oh, well, we got this to add on to them now. And I also learned like the Lord was also planning this aspect to kind of reveal certain things, and there's a lot deeper meaning to all that too. But church manipulation does happen, and sometimes most of the time it's just like, oh, it's like tap on the hand kind of manipulation. But for me, it was like, and one of the verses I'm going to just share with you guys here, chapter 16 of John, verse 2. And they shall put you out of the synagogue. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he does God service. And sometimes they just learn and think that this is God's will for me to act this way and to do this and that. And through the whole experience, I grew in my faith. I grew in strength. Even though I was made weak, I remember there's one event where it's like the Lord just confirmed to me that I was in right standing with Him, even though they were against me and just being manipulative, just bad and beating me up. And I remember the lady telling me, it's like, yeah, I was praying for you the whole time during all that. And it's like, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. But it was actually kind of comforting. It's like, yeah, someone else saw that I was being manipulated. And to realize just to the degree that I was. And a lot of times, I think a lot of people are being manipulated in the church, and then they kind of go crazy. And then, like, the church just points out to them like, oh, this crazy behavior that they just did just kind of proves their point, blah, 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 blah. And that's where you gotta be like wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove a lot of times. And eventually the Lord had a time for me to leave, and he gave me Isaiah chapter, I think it was 45 or no, 54, I believe, where it's talking about expanding your tents and like, no weapon that shall form against you shall prosper. And yeah, like I really actually grew tremendously in that time. And even the Lord told me, it's like, that you're going to be going through a refiner's fire. And you say, well, why don't you just leave the church right off the bat? And I kid you not, I actually, at one point, I was like, I don't want to be friends with her anymore. And I was just kind of like almost in my own way was going to kind of sabotage the friendship. I wouldn't say sabotage, but just try to avoid her a lot. And the Lord just told me to go back, because I basically just kind of left. And eventually the Lord told me to actually leave the church, but a lot of that was also refiner's fire that I had to go through. And it was a purification process, and there is so much that I can't really get into details, only because of time. But it did help me grow a lot in my faith, and even from being able to hear the Lord and hear His goodness and His mercy. And, it's like the one verse, it's like, when I am weak, I am strong. And a lot of times, you feel like you're at your weakest, lowest point. But you think about it, I remember running a marathon that's 26.2 miles. I was actually pretty strong. I think anybody that can run 26.2 miles, I mean, granted, maybe I stopped a few times here and there, and I literally was running at one point where it's like, if I ran any faster, I was going to get a Charlie horse in my legs and stuff of that nature. But I was exerting a tremendous amount of strength to be able to run that race. And because I was exerting so much strength, I was made weak at the end of that race. And you may be going through a church manipulation or have gone, and you feel like you've been just completely drained. Well, that's because you've been running through a marathon, and a marathon will drain you of a lot of what you would call and make you weak. But think about it in this sense, through our weakness, Christ has made us strong. But how do I put it this way? Whenever you use a tremendous amount of strength, you're always going to feel weak afterwards. And so that weakness, you feel that weakness, but that's not how you really are. You actually are a lot stronger because of what you have had, how much strength, and relying upon the Lord's strength also to get you through the circumstances that you've had to go through. And I just pray the Lord continue to give you strength and continue to bless you in these times and the persecution you may have gone through in the past. And the Lord has had to heal me, and there is certain things that He had to heal me that were later on in life only because I wasn't ready to receive the healing, because other things had to be healed first before He could give the full healing. But I remember afterwards there was a lot of healing the Lord did do to my heart too after that. So don't know who this is going to bless, but God bless you. And maybe through hearing some of my struggles will hopefully give you some strength to what you've gone through. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Bye.